The True Story of the First Thanksgiving by Colin Adams. What is Thanksgiving? Thanksgiving is a day Americans spend thinking about all the things they are thankful for. People who celebrate Thanksgiving spend time with their families and eat a big special dinner with turkey and other tasty food. The tradition of Thanksgiving began with the Pilgrims who settled in Plymouth, Massachusetts in 1620. There are many myths about how the first Thanksgiving was celebrated, though. Do you want to know what really happened on the very first Thanksgiving? Let's look at what many people think happened and what the truth really is. The story of the first Thanksgiving begins with the Pilgrims. In the early 1600s, some people in England wanted to break away from the Church of England. They wanted to do this because they did not have the freedom to practice their own religion. They decided to leave England and travel to the New World. The Pilgrims left England on a ship called the Mayflower on September 16, 1620. They hoped that starting a new life would give them the freedoms they did not have in England. Some of the Pilgrims also wanted to find adventure in a new land. The Pilgrims' trip lasted 66 days. Several storms tossed the Mayflower around on the ocean and made the trip very hard. The food and water supplies were almost gone by the time the ship reached land. The Pilgrims landed in the New World in late December 1620, and they named their settlement Plymouth. It is believed that the Pilgrims landed on Plymouth Rock. However, historians never found a description of where exactly the Pilgrims came ashore. The rock was not written about until years later. Because of this, the truth about whether the Pilgrims landed on Plymouth Rock may never be known. The first winter in Plymouth was very hard. Those who were healthy had to take care of the sick, build houses, and plant crops. The Pilgrims were also worried about the Native Americans who already lived on the land. These Native Americans were part of the Wampanoag tribe. The Pilgrims were not sure if the Wampanoags will welcome them. On March 16, 1621, an Algonquian Native American named Samoset came to Plymouth. He told the settlers who he was and he talked peacefully with them. And soon after, Samoset brought Squanto, a member of the Wampanoag tribe, to help the settlers. Squanto became friends with the Pilgrims. He showed them the best places to fish and hunt. He taught them how to plant corn and use spices in their cooking. Soon, the settlers were feeling stronger. Colonist William Bradford wrote in his journal that the Pilgrims would not have lived without Squanto's help. Samoset and Squanto set up a meeting between John Carver, the leader of the Plymouth settlement, and Massasoit, chief of the Wampanoag tribe. They signed a peace treaty, and the Pilgrims did not have to worry about the trouble with the Wampanoag tribe anymore. By fall of 1621, the Pilgrims had grown a lot of corn and other crops with Squanto's help. They had enough food to eat and some left over for the next winter. The Pilgrims decided to celebrate the harvest with a special gathering with the Native Americans. It was a day of food, games, and dancing. Many believe that the Pilgrims called this celebration Thanksgiving. However, to the Pilgrims, a day of Thanksgiving was spent in church. This harvest celebration was just a day to give thanks for all the food. The name Thanksgiving was not used until years later. There are many myths about what happened when the Pilgrims and Native Americans gathered to celebrate. One myth is that the Pilgrims and Native Americans ate together at a big table one afternoon. It is now known, however, that the harvest celebration lasted for 3 days, not one. They did not sit down to eat either. Instead, they stood up and likely ate with their fingers. The Pilgrims and Native Americans did a lot more than eat that day. the men and boys took part in running and jumping games. There was even singing and dancing. When people gather now for Thanksgiving dinner, they eat foods such as cranberry sauce, potatoes, and pumpkin pie. Many believe that the Pilgrims ate these foods too. However, the Pilgrims and Native Americans did not have those foods. Instead, they ate boiled pumpkin, fruit, nuts, squash, and beans. Eating turkey at Thanksgiving dinner has become a Thanksgiving custom. Many historians think, though, that the Pilgrims and Native Americans may have not eaten turkey at the celebration. The Pilgrims and Native Americans had turkeys around, but no one knows for sure whether they ate them that day. Another myth that people believe is that the Pilgrims celebrated the harvest every year after the first harvest. It has been proven, however, that the Pilgrims celebrated the harvest only when they had plentiful crops. Thanksgiving didn't happen every year until much later. This is one of the biggest myths of Thanksgiving. In 1863, President Abraham Lincoln made Thanksgiving the last Thursday of November. This was the first time it was stated that a day of Thanksgiving was to be celebrated every year. This is when the United States still celebrates Thanksgiving today. The Pilgrims' idea of giving thanks for their harvest has become a tradition that has lasted hundreds of years. Many stories about what happened on that day of celebration had come about since. However, most of these stories have been proven wrong. Did the Pilgrims land on Plymouth Rock? Did the Pilgrims and Native Americans gather together at one big table for dinner? Did they eat turkey? Many questions have been answered, but some may remain a mystery. Whatever the truth is, giving thanks and spending time with the family every year is an important tradition. It will be enjoyed for many years to come.